There you go.
All right, Maria, good to see you.
See you too, Courtney. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. We're doing this a little bit off our tempo, which is totally okay. So,
Yeah.
we're going to have a great conversation today about some of those most trickiest clients. In my world, they can show up feeling like they're doing everything they possibly can from a dietary standpoint to manage their gut symptoms. I'm sure in your world, it's the same thing, only they're having a lot of blood sugar swings and dips and stuff. So, we're going to kind of talk about like that camp of what to do if you feel like you're still having these flares or these dips and you've exhausted what you know how to do for yourself from a dietary standpoint, right?
Yes. And I think that one thing that it's important is folks are like, how do I know that I'm having a dip,
Yeah.
or a flare?
Yeah.
And, from a blood sugar perspective, metabolic health, we normally feel kind of down, right? We ate and we're feeling like literally lethargic, fatigued, and all that kind of stuff. And the
Yeah.
reasons is why is that? But then there's could be other reasons. So
Hmm.
today we're going to focus a lot on, the stressors in the body and stressors including cortisol, but also, blood sugar swings that comes from multiple behaviors and habits including food. So it's not
Yes.
only food that impacts blood sugar, but that is what's going to contribute to this, you know up here and down here, that we
Yeah.
feel it. And from our world, we love the data, right, Courtney? we
Right.
we, we love to kind of see, okay, what is potentially explaining here or helping explain this person's symptoms.
Yep.
Because a lot of individuals come to us with symptoms and things that have not been answered from a traditional way.
Yeah.
And you and I dive a little deeper into what's potentially causing those things using, history, using uh, functional lab testing tools, you name it. So it's
Yeah.
far beyond and also complementary what the medical system does. So it's not one answer, right? It's multiple angles. In the reality, what we want for as practitioners and coaches is to help people to live a long lasting and healthy life, right?
Yes.
Feeling in control of their health.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would say in my world, it's a little more obvious because obviously we're talking about people with overt IBS or IBD symptom struggles. So, the crowd I really try to like speak to is the folks with more the urgency, the, loose stool, the running to the bathroom. And that's very common with all types of IBD, but also IBSD. However, I do get folks that are the other end where they just can't go, right? Either they're feeling like they're backed up, they're trying, it's just not having a complete bowel movement, or sometimes they might not have a bowel movement for several days. And so that's obviously going to be a lot more obvious versus the blood sugar swings. I like you said, Maria, they're still gonna feel it on some level, but it might not be like hitting you in the face level where like you can actually see you're having this major symptom going on. That's like no mistake, it's happening, right? So yeah, like even as we're starting this conversation, like I'm just thinking about two pieces of this puzzle that I know are so big that my clients don't tend to think of or give as much credibility to. That usually is the track I'll go down with these folks. But yeah, we can talk about kind of how you attack this type of situation from your end too. So, yeah, where should we dive in on this one?
I think let's just start with the most obvious, what
Yeah.
people feel
Yeah.
and how it impacts their life. Because there is one thing that is the silent killer, I want to say. It's
Yeah.
slowly and steady, kind of causing some imbalances in the body and damage even to the DNA, which is blood sugar imbalances can do that. But then there is the obvious. And
Hmm.
so why don't you share with all of us over here some of this obvious is stressors to the body and that causes those, dips and also, elevations of all kinds of stuff, from
Yeah.
stress to mood to, irritability and all that.
Yeah. 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 So, just at a very foundational level, always we want to start with diet. And so, if you're watching this and you feel like you've made a lot of improvements in your diet and you're still getting stuck and you're still having issues, this might not resonate quite as deeply, more so for the folks watching who aren't maybe at that place with their diet where they've put a lot of the foundational aspects in. And granted, Maria and I are trained in a way where there's no one size fits all dietary approach for every person. We're really trained to kind of understand the individual's preferences, lifestyle factors, I guess. Just generally, everybody's going to do better on a different macronutrient balance. Certain foods might work well for one person versus not another. But I would say, just in general, foundational speak, right? Like a whole foods sort of unprocessed nutrient dense diet would be primary for just about everybody across the board. And then from there it kind of gets down to identifying the biggest food triggers, and for some people those might be foods that they could eventually add back into their diet and regain tolerance to, depending on what's really going on with the gut, how broken down it is, how many hidden infections, that type of thing. Others might find that there's certain foods that they would do better avoiding lifelong to really have their highest level of health, right? And then from there, we could kind of talk about macronutrient balance, which is generally speaking, amount of fats, carbs, and protein in the diet, which also is very important. But there's just such a range of like what is going to work for various people within those two spheres, right, Maria? And then beyond that, obviously, I kind of started to allude to it. It's just looking at the gut at a deeper level too, and trying to identify, okay, so we obviously are not processing certain foods very well in a lot of cases. Why is that happening, right? Is it because the person just isn't digesting their food very well? And we can get clues from the testing we run that would tell us about stomach acid production, pancreatic enzyme production, bile quality. Those are the three kind of main areas of digestion that need to be online and working properly to break all of the foods down appropriately and set the stage for good nutrient absorption. But then beyond that, we want to take a look at the microbial environment of the gut and look at what types of bacteria are populating. Is there enough of the good guys? Are there too many of the bad guys? What kinds of other bad guys might we be seeing there, right? And all of those factors can put additional physical stressors on the body that a lot of people are just simply unaware of because they don't have necessarily access to this testing. Even if they did, they're not entirely sure what to do if these things came back, right? So that's where we kind of help the rubber meet the road and look at this information and then interpret it and help clients come up with a plan that's going to get them to a better place. So from a physiological standpoint, like those are two big pieces to really look at and start with. And then as you're kind of touching on, Maria, there's the whole lifestyle, mental quality, environmental quality. And these are kind of factors both inside our own brains and how we talk to ourselves, how we relate to our life, literally the thoughts we're saying to ourselves, the thoughts we're thinking about others. This is a deep rabbit hole. There's the schedules we keep, the balance in our lives, how we sleep, how we prepare ourselves to sleep, how we support that work and rest and play balance, the type of environment we live in our homes, all the way down to what are we cooking with and what are we using to clean our homes. Like there's so much to say there, Maria. So I'll let you kind of talk on that and add in there for a minute.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a lot. And somebody listening to this and it says, oh my God, I don't have time to figure this out. That sounds like a lot. I'm overwhelmed just listening to you, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we understand that can be overwhelming, but everything in life starts with one step. And the first step is, how do you feel? How do you feel?
Mhm.
Do you feel like you get up in the morning vibrant and ready to go and kick some tails? Or you feel lethargic, right? And throughout the day, you have these ups and downs. And then there is the bathroom situation.
Mhm.
There is the stomach situation. How do I feel? And then do we feel brain fog? And so first question is, how do I feel when I get up? And then throughout the day,
Yep.
am I being productive to the level that I would like to, dealing with all the craziness in life? The craziness, like I think you're saying, is some of these we attract to ourselves because and other
Yeah.
things are like showed up to our lives as challenges. So how
Right.
equipped are each one of us to deal with those stressors, because we cannot control them all?
Right. Right.
And part of the conversation that you're saying is, what can we control?
Right.
Part of it, right?
Right.
So one is awareness. Second is, okay, if you know that you're not well, Then what is the next step? Well, let's dive in to figure out why, what's potentially causing. And yes, every decision we make related to food and lifestyle habits and exercise and yada yada, they all make a difference. But if
Yes.
you're already living in that, circumstance, that bubble, I'm gonna call it, whatever the bubble is, for
Yeah.
years, and things are slowly changing downward, that's a sign.
Yeah.
That's a sign that is like, okay, I need to pay attention here, because if I don't change
Mhm.
something, then things can get worse and worse. So how does that relate to me, to the things that I want in my life, in priorities that I have going forward? So those are kind of basic questions. Then you say, okay, what Courtney and I do in our businesses are to help individuals suffering and having this awareness that, okay, we have more data. We can get data from your body, right?
Yeah.
Instead of guessing. Can we do actually work without any testing? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Because I think there's always tweaks, right? And some people are primed, they're like dial in, and they're like, I cannot explain. Well, then the testing probably is your next thing, right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
when we have the test, sometimes it can, not sometimes, it will normally shortcut the process of healing,
Yeah.
because now is your data instead of trying this, trying that. And people who we work with, they have tried multiple things,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I rarely get somebody who says, "Oh, I'm just wandering around and wondering, and I want to see what I can do to improve here. But I really have done all those things. But what else?" Very rarely we get those,
Exactly.
right? People are
Yeah.
struggling and they know that they can be so much more.
Yeah.
Now somebody might be listening, Courtney, and I would love for you to talk about this.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, um, what happened here, because I could, I didn't feel this way for a long period of time. And let's imagine this is a person in, you know, early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, And you're like, well, you're talking about digestion of food, absorption of food, bile, and says, okay, well, I mean, what all of a sudden you're telling me that I have this, or
Yeah.
that this is a problem? And the question is, let's dive a little deeper and say, what is potentially leading to that? So
Mhm.
there is, okay, microbiome dysbiosis, which is an imbalance between the good guys and the bad guys that you mentioned. It says, how did this stuff appears?
Yeah.
What are some of the root cause, that can lead a person to over time, because this is not like this,
Yeah.
get to that point. Can you share a little bit more on that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can even use myself as an example because the very people that I really direct my messaging to help are people that went through the same thing I did, right? On some level, some version of it. So I think the first thing to say on this point is like, it's really thought all chronic illness on some level, including cancer, including metabolic conditions like type 2 diabetes, falls on the autoimmune spectrum to some degree, right? Because if you think about just the health of the body is so dependent on having a well balanced, well working immune system that has proper tolerance to its own tissues and cells and aspects, but can also detect problems in the body, whether they're bacterial or viral or abnormal cell growth, right? Like that is kind of the precipice of good health. And so there's a lot that impacts obviously the immune system. But if you know anything about just autoimmune disease, it's really understood that this is a decades long process, right? In development. And so if we kind of come at all chronic inflammatory illness from this idea that there's immune dysregulation happening, and then you also understand that autoimmune disease comes about over decades, like years for sure, that you really understand this isn't like an overnight development of any disease state, really, right? And I mean, even just speaking from my own personal experience with initially an IBS-D diagnosis in my late 20s and then an IBD diagnosis in my 30s. And by the way, the IBD diagnosis actually came after I was initially a nutrition therapy practitioner, had already done a ton of work on my diet, was well above where the average Joe was eating, which kind of gets back to our like, why would you run tests, right, Maria? Like, I had complex stuff going on that I needed some deeper answers on. But to back this whole train up, I mean, even as a kid, I had chronic stomach aches, and back in the 80s growing up, nobody really, at least from what I remember, it wasn't well understood to look for things like wheat sensitivity or celiac disease or those types of things, right? Like my parents, unless you were like literally very ill, wouldn't necessarily think, oh, let's take her to the hospital or let's take her to the doctor and have some further testing done. I don't remember that being a thing. And these stomach aches would pass, right? And besides that, I was quite healthy. Like we went to the YMCA, we did all kinds of sports. Like we were very active as kids, but the early signs were there, right? And so
Mhm.
interestingly, like as I got older, I think a function of what was leading to some of my own gut breakdown happening slowly over time. It wasn't like I woke up one day and it was like, whoa, everything fell off a cliff. Although there was a little bit of that in my 30s, I think it was undetected celiac gene potential, right? Like I didn't know I carried those genes. Nobody ever tested me. I didn't know I was extremely wheat sensitive, right? Like nobody ever tested me or gave me that information. So for a long time in my life, childhood, birth onward, that was a regular food that I was consuming that was slowly leading to more and more gut mucosal barrier breakdown, immune activation. We call this leaky gut, right? That's probably a term people are familiar with, which then sets the stage for all kinds of noxious stuff to actually get out of the digestive system, circulate in the body, and then lead to even more inflammation systemically, right? So that was a piece and a silent one that progressed slowly for me. The other piece for me was, again, lifestyle, self-induced, whether I knew it or not, right? And this is so many people, Maria, because I was a very committed athlete, super type A. I did collegiate rowing at the lightweight level. I did swim team for a long time before that. After the rowing stuff, I got into triathlons. I did a marathon. I did a half Ironman. Like none of that, looking back, was good for my body, right? And keep in mind, during that entire time, I was also eating a vegetarian diet. So extreme, extreme macronutrient imbalances, probably huge sugar handling dysregulation with the amount of like intense exercise and no animal protein to support that. Now, again, no judgment here if you are a vegetarian watching, but like Maria and I, just kind of the philosophy we come from is that if you're really depleted and broken down from a nutrient density and absorbability standpoint, animal-based foods, high quality animal-based foods are always, they have to be a cornerstone of the diet to help rebuild the body, right? And back in that day, I had no clue, right? Like I thought eating vegetarian was a really great idea. Not to mention all of the rancid seed oils and stuff and the hummus and whatnot I was eating at the time, right? Like all of that, right? Just leads down that path of inflammation. So for me, it was just a lot of lack of misunderstanding of good balance. And I had the gas in the tank in my 20s to do all this, but I know I was starting to feel tired. I definitely remember being in my mid 20s going into graduate school and like struggling with fatigue, but still pushing myself to stick to this like super rigid, intense exercise regimen, because I was so conditioned. Like, I had so trained into my brain, this is like what I have to do to be healthy or to be fit or whatever it is, right? And so half of this is like conditioning and the way that you start to relate to yourself from a young level onwards, right? Those thought patterns have to be re-examined once you hit that health breakdown because it forces you to look at everything, right? But then the other side is, yeah, just making those habit choices day in and day out that were really exhausting me and depleting my body and going through that reserve of, just good resilience and energy that all of us to a certain extent are born into this world with, right? Like as young children, and then as you age, you're fighting that aging process. And not to say you can't be healthy in old age, but realize that as you age, that capacity to bring the body back into balance, to have this deep reserve to tap into, it's just not there on the same level. And then I think for me, another big tipping point was after the birth of my first child. I mean, truly, I think this is where a lot of women, especially diagnosed with autoimmune conditions, they can come after a huge life transitional stressor like that, like childbirth, or, sometimes even in their teenage years as they're having all that hormonal change and, or, hitting menopause, right? Like hormone levels absolutely impact immune functioning and vice versa, right? And so it was like after going through that process of having my first child, my health tanked again. And so not to say don't have children. It's not at all what I'm saying, but just as
Yeah.
a female who's, you think about just how much your body has to do in all of these stages of life and what you expect of it day in and day out. That's just so important. In looking backwards and saying like, oh my God, I can appreciate how all of these things my physical body had to endure and go through were major stressors, and then not supporting it in the way I probably should have to offset that possibility that I was going to have major GI dysfunction. That would be much harder to fix than in my 30s after it had been through all of these events. So, just from my own example, like that's what I would offer up is just like that's kind of how it happened. There were signs and the breakdown was happening in my 20s already, but it wasn't until my 30s that I really started to like get into a hole that felt impossible to dig out of. And I wish I would have known what I know now way back then, 2, 3 decades ago, right? So
Wow, what a great example, right? Because I'm gonna pick up a few things that you said in there because the question was, how can this low immunity, let's put this way, or body signs with some weaknesses, or your energy going down can be triggered. So there's a few things that you mentioned in your story. One is sensitivities to foods or even allergy to foods,
yep,
right?
yep.
Now, those foods and allergies, they don't mean often that you're born with, but they can develop based on already on an immune system that you have. And
Mm-hmm.
how obviously from the moment that you're born, actually even before the moment you're born, the passage, how you are come to this world is going to make a difference on the microbiome that you have, right?
Yeah.
A C-section versus a natural. So,
Yep.
and everything else that happens afterwards. So sometimes people will have this autoimmune diseases, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, as they progress in life. That's
Yep.
why we see sometimes celiac disease coming up, but in the person in their teens, 20s, even 30s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that you mentioned is that food sensitivities, and that
Mm-hmm.
comes with multiple reasons underneath why somebody would have that sensitivity, but oftentimes comes from poor immune, diversity that
Exactly.
protects the
Exactly.
body. So then
Yep.
the question is why the poor diversity? So again, we go back to, from the moment you're born to everything that has been happening. And so that's one thing. The other thing that you mentioned, which is big, is this stressor from a physical level.
Yep.
Look, I do CrossFit. I've been exercising for a long time. For a while, I was obsessed with volleyball until my shoulder gave in. Um, Exercise is my sanity. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And it's fundamental for life. Yet, when the body is not fed enough, it
Yeah.
can trigger a huge stressor.
Yes.
Okay. And we can see that even from blood sugar perspective, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I'll share a story of it's somebody that I'm looking into their CGMs recently right now and all that kind of stuff. And it's all really an example of potentially what could have been happened to you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
here is somebody in the 20s pushing and doing, well, in the 20s, the body has a lot of reserve, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And then, now if we keep doing this, bombarding without having the energy availability, because that's part of what it is. You're just like, oh, I was a vegetarian. Nothing against the vegetarians, yet you have to be extremely picky and kind of a detail to ensure that the
Yeah.
body is getting the macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbs necessary to continue supply the energy and restoration of the body. So nothing wrong with a vegan or vegetarian diet. However, it's going to have some big lens into it, big
Yeah.
lens.
Totally.
While a diet that contains animal protein is going to help a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
still, we look into the macronutrients and based on a person's activities to
Yeah.
ensure that it's supporting the body. So that's another thing, over exercising without not having energy availability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nutrients.
Totally.
So those are two big things that you mentioned. And then there is the body transition. As a woman, there is a lot going on, quite
Mm-hmm.
different than a man's body and what we're here for. We're different genders and we play different roles, and those are stressors. So imagine here somebody coming from you. I'm just putting my lens like, okay, so here we go. You have some sensitivities growing up, but you had no idea. So it's
Mm-hmm.
slowly and steady depleting the body. then you push hard, you
Mhm.
know, through exercise, not replenishing,
Mhm.
enough. And so we continue to use that strength that you have natural, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
then here comes pregnancy, which
Yep.
is extreme demand,
Mhm.
right? Demand. So that was a tipping point.
Totally. Yeah.
And it happens a lot, right? We have a lot of female clients that are like, okay, they noticed that after the pregnancy, they couldn't get back on it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
couldn't feel the same.
Yeah.
So you and I work with people who want to try to get pregnant too. And I says, okay, let's prepare the body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's ensure that the body is prepared. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're in birth control. Okay, that is depleting the body. We're not
Right.
saying, we're not doing medical analysis over here,
Advice.
but we gotta understand
Yeah.
that medications that we're in are impacting the physiology of the body and the nutrients in the body. So, well, underneath is giving you some result, but it's also we gotta watch. Are we replenishing the body?
Exactly.
Plus whatever else, the history of a person, right?
Exactly.
So those are three big things that can create this dysbiosis, this imbalances that can lead to, okay, not absorbing well, or there is, I'm getting sick, more often, getting exposed to this. And why am I the only one on the trip here that was not feeling well? And my husband or spouse is. I'm like, we're all unique.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we cannot compare ourselves to the next person because it's too unique, right?
Exactly, Maria. Yeah, and just to build on the point of like, having the energy in the tank to supply the body if you're going to do exercise, especially intense exercise or like training for something like a marathon, a half marathon, a triathlon, whatever it is. The thing I've been appreciating the older I get with that too is that you have to factor in other areas of your life that demand energy, including mental energy, because I can say now in my mid 40s, running two businesses, mom of three kids now, right? Like there is only a certain amount of exercise I can actually appropriately handle at this time in my life at the age I'm at with all of those things. And I think that's another thing for people to really think about. And that also gets back to, again, your relationship with self and your own expectations with regards to yourself. Because I think a lot of times where we're coming into these barriers are more so mental and the brain trying to push the body in a direction it really can't handle for a whole host of reasons. And there's this discordance where like what we think we should be doing, where we think we should be, whether that's like body weight wise. I have a lot of women that are very hard on themselves because they feel like they should be at a different body weight because they're doing all these things, right? And it's like
Yes.
wanting to go more extreme to try to get there. And it's like, no, 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 no. And like with the pregnancy thing too, it's like there's a reason why your body isn't going down to that weight. And so instead of like feeling frustrated or critical about it to yourself, like maybe let's take a step back and try to like have some compassion and curiosity about like why is that happening? And same thing with infertility. It's like, yeah, let's do things to prep the body, but if it's a situation where that couple can't get pregnant, there's a good biological reason why that's not happening. And to try to push that aggressively in a direction to make that happen is not necessarily in the best interest of the body because there's reasons there, right? And I think that's a big piece that people struggle with when they're trying to regain their health is like trying to make it happen on their timeline or according to their prescribed ideas about what it should look like, right, Maria?
Oh boy, yes. Just this week, I had a session with an older gentleman. He's progressively. He was um, unsatisfied with the speed that he was starting to lose weight, but it
I
came from
yeah,
eating crap, right? And
yeah,
so teaching him how to eat,
yeah,
um, you know, look into his gut, look into his food sensitivities, and slowly, and he's like, he wants to lose weight faster. And I asked him, how long have you been with this weight?
yeah,
Has been over 20 years. And it says, my friend, you need to be patient.
yeah,
We need to be patient. So
totally.
allow your body, so continue the work that you're doing, and
Hmm.
eventually things are going to start going the right direction.
Exactly.
So it started. So he started losing weight, so he's like more than 15 pounds now, and is still not happy, right?
Yeah.
And I says, now I'm a quick fix, kind of guy. And I said, we're not dealing with a quick fix body, especially
Right.
somebody in late 60s,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
And I said, you're moving in the right direction. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint.
Yeah.
Nobody promised you a sprint.
Right.
The marathon of understanding what you're eating, what you put in your body, what you're doing with movement, right?
Yeah.
Because if I start working out, walking more, and now I was going to look into a trainer, all these kind of little things and yada, yada.
Yeah.
Folks, we need to be patient.
Yeah.
And we hate to say this, but as we age, the body's gonna not gonna be as fast processing and metabolizing things.
Yep.
So let's do the best we can to feed what it needs, to get the rest that we need, to allow it to respond appropriately. But it's not the same speed in your 40s or 50s or 60s than was as a teen in your 20s. I
Totally.
mean, there is right. Nobody's saying that we gotta age unhealthy here or healthy aging is impossible. No, none of that. We're just
Mhm.
saying that there is a little bit more attention necessary
Yeah.
and rest also necessary,
Exactly.
right? Like
Yeah.
say the abs are not, are made in the kitchen. They're not made in the exercise room, right? But
Right.
yes, and then I would say that is in the kitchen, but it's also beyond that. Is on the sleep.
Yeah, for sure, Maria. Yeah, oh god, we could do like a whole just
Oh yes,
conversation on like the importance of rest and exercise because I feel like that's
yeah.
something I'm always trying to hit home with my almost 14-year-old. As we've talked about last time we had a conversation, it's like every day this push-up routine and even on his rest days all these push-ups. I'm like, "You do realize that that's resistance training. Like you're breaking down those muscles and you're not allowing them to rebuild. Like you do realize that that's going to be counterproductive. You're not going to actually gain strength that way. So yeah, you're so spot on. Like that recovery has to be just as important and just as appreciated as the time you spend working hard to like build your body up. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. Yeah, very, very, I'm going to share this example of somebody on the exercise and now diving a little bit on CGMs, continuous glucose monitor and blood sugar imbalances, right? So this is um, a woman in their late 20s and, not necessarily insulin resistant or anything like that, but with background of eating disorder
Hmm.
and poor relationship with food. So
Yeah.
but she has made tremendous, improvement. So she's even teaching now, involved in nonprofit to help young ladies, with the relationship with food. But is one of those people who started, eating quite often. I think I might have mentioned that last time. And she's
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I'm eating 3 times a day and I feel so much better. I couldn't believe that it's possible." So,
Yeah.
and she started to use the CGM to understand more about her glucose.
Yeah.
And so we started seeing in several dips,
Yeah.
I mean, many, many dips. And then, okay, let's evaluate. I use a Thea, which is a platform that connects, that has relationships with the a few CGMs like
Hmm.
Libre and Dexcom, and basically allow us to track a lot more and see amazing graphs and things that the Libre itself is not going to do it. Dexcom is not going to do it. So
Nice.
I love that platform because you can track there all your nutrition. You also track your sleep, your stress, meaning that you actually put little images and notes about it, sauna, cold plunges, exercise. So on that platform, we were able to see really if a person is using the app properly,
Yeah.
what's potentially driving that up and down,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And again, a lot of this we can see in image. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just right there. And we can see her in her case that this week is like, she's working out, going to a workout. And one example was like, oh, I did my cardio first and then went to a strength training,
Hmm.
you know. So, and before that, she had some breakfast, some food earlier. So what happened? The cardio increased the blood sugar, which is normal. It's putting a stressor in the body. The body needs, the nutrients, the glucose. So oftentimes it's going to pick it up from what is circulating in the body, or it's going to go to the muscle actually and
Break it
extract from the
down.
muscle, break down the
Yeah.
muscle,
Yeah.
right? If there is no nutrients. And then it crashed down. And then she went to, that's just before her strength training, it was all the way in the bottom and
Yeah.
then started going up with strength training. And she's like, well, I did some research and seems like, strength training can increase blood sugar. It says yes, it will naturally, and also it will go down, but that's normal. We have
Yeah.
to be fed. But what is more critical for us to see is what caused over here this dip.
Yeah.
And it says there's not enough food.
Yeah.
There's not
Totally.
enough nutrients in here.
Totally.
So then we look into, this ups and down, that variability on glucose is not a healthy one. That it
Mhm.
starts to create oxidative stress in the body. It creates
Mhm.
damaging to the DNA of the cells over time. So going back to the point that you potentially was happening to you back then, your body's resilient then too, right? It's this ups and downs. There's no other way to know this stuff.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I'm just like, okay, first of all, we don't want to, be doing this strong cardio aerobic before the strength training when the goal here is to build muscle. And
Right.
then
Exactly.
we have to be fed. And then if you're going to be an extended, amount of time during these workouts, we need maybe to add something in here
Yeah.
because throughout the day it creates all these ups and downs.
Yeah.
And that variability is almost, well, it is kind of impossible for anybody to know unless you kind
Mhm.
of tracking.
Yeah.
And then a person could have, in this case, this young lady, the average glucose is decent, but the variability throughout the day is not. So
Exactly.
what is underneath, it's creating like a pot, and that can become a problem
Yeah.
with damage of the cells.
Yeah.
And when we think about the damage of the cells, is the cells, the outside membrane of the cells, they're made of lipid.
Yeah.
So this stressor can oxidize that, and then can become the cells can become insulin resistance.
Yeah.
So meaning that we eat and the foods are, glucose is circulating and we need to take that glucose, put inside the cell with oxygen and then several other micronutrients and generates energy. So when we
Mhm.
think about somebody's fatigue levels, whether it's brain or the organ, whatever, you know, it's cells.
Mhm.
Are we eating enough? Are we eating enough of the right foods? Right
Mm.
foods, again, we started the conversation, what is right for you is different, but there are certain things that we say, well, this will kind of damage. Like most people's cells, is going to create oxidative stress. Example, fried foods. That's a given, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or sodas and things like that with extreme levels of glucose and sugars and all that, that again is going to create this oxidative stress in the body. So there's certain things that you don't have to have a degree to understand that creates some damage. But I think most of us are unaware of the
Mm.
damage they can create. So one example, I've done, CGM kind of testing and all that kind of stuff and experiments. But it's the first time that I used the Thea app for it, which it was great, which way more insightful. And for a month, I put myself in a situation that was really not good. Literally, I felt like I was back on 10, 15 years ago or longer for most of my life. Cravings, irritability, thinking about food all the time. Boy, Courtney, it was bad. I couldn't wait to be done with the experiment because I wanted to do long enough to test multiple things, and I was really eating not normal to me.
Yeah.
I put my body in a stress level. A mentor of mine says, "Why are you doing this?" I mean, I says, "I wouldn't do this," and I says, "I'm doing this because I can. First of all, I'm a
Yeah.
healthy individual. I know what I'm doing, and this is not going to be forever."
Yeah. Right.
But I felt the consequences. I felt there were days that I was like, oh my God, I was irritable. I was hungry all the time because I was eating a diet that is very low in fiber. Boy, I mean, I don't even know how many grams of fiber I ate in the whole month, you know? And I was testing foods that I normally don't eat them and then testing foods that I do eat, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And one highlight of that, and you probably say this to your clients as well, when we talk about macronutrients. One of
Mhm.
the things that without a glucose monitor or pricking of your finger, we say, hey, keep those proteins and fats in a good level and keep the carbs down. So normally that's going to keep, the glucose from spiking, right? We agree on that?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well, is that true for everybody? Is that true for every food that is actually part of that macronutrient or that carb? I learned a few lessons, you know.
Yeah.
And for example, one of the lessons was like, wow, it was kind of insane. I dates, you know. So there is a study recently. I did this in purpose too, because there is a guy in social media talking about a study that came out about dates. And that, oh, it's great to eat dates. I mean, doesn't impact the glucose. And I'm like, oh, I know it impacts mine. I know it does. But without even know, doing a 3 CGM because I feel the, I
You
feel
can
the
feel it.
alertness and it says, okay, that blood
Yeah.
sugar is going up,
Yeah.
and it says, oh, I'm gonna just check it. So first I started with, have you heard about that RX bar? There's like four
Oh, sure,
ingredients.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like four ingredients is healthy and all that. Well, those RX bars have two dates on it, you know,
They
and
gotta
then
have
it's
more than
cashew.
2. They gotta have more than 2, I would think, in
I,
there, Maria.
I,
Those things
I
are pretty big.
no, I think it's two. It
It's
says two
just 2?
dates.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh, but anyway, so you look at the macronutrient composition, it's decent.
Yeah,
The net carbs, because what we say net carbs is like carbs minus the fiber that becomes net carbs,
sure. Yeah.
right? And protein and fats, it's pretty balanced.
Mhm.
And you would say, well, that's great. Well, my blood sugar shot up for about 40, 50 pounds and points. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I was going to a workout, so I was actually trying to bump my sugars anyway because I was lifting heavy in
Sure.
that day. And I says, that's interesting. Then I decided to test the dates by
By
itself.
themselves. Yeah.
My blood sugar went up over 100 points.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One serving, which is 40 grams, it's about 5, 6 dates, whatever it was, the skinny ones. And I'm like, there you go.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, you're like, well, does that mean you're never going to eat dates again? I says, no, I'm not saying that, but I will have to eat with caution.
Right, right,
And
right.
depending for what. Now, could dates be great if I'm going to go for a long run or multiple sets of exercises like you did and to continue to feed the body energy? Yes, great.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm going to, I don't know, Sedona, Arizona, be hiking every day and, long hours on hiking and trails. That could be good to have.
for sure.
Or if I'm going to create a dessert, maybe I don't put 5, 6 dates, whatever the recipe is. I'm going to put less and look for maybe allulose or some other form of sweetener or something. So part of this glucose, CGMs or pricking your finger is to learn how your body is receiving, how your body is processing, and then making decisions. And that is data, it's your body. So that study, mm, I don't care about the damn study. So if people are just looking into the average, if this impacts that, well, you're not the average, you're unique.
Right, right, right.
And, healthy foods can have a negative, I want to say, impact in that way, but it's also, if it is a whole food, there is several other vitamins and minerals and things like that in that food. So do I want to stop eating, period? I will eat dates, but I'm not gonna buy a bag from Costco anymore.
Well, one thing you're saying too, Maria, that I think is just getting back to like if we deduce this to like a very simple level is like the RX bar with the egg white protein in there. And I don't remember if they put a little bit of nuts or something potentially too with some
Yes,
healthy
they do.
fat, right?
Yeah.
It's more macronutrient balanced, which is going to improve and slow down that like release of glucose into the bloodstream. And so, without using CGM technology in my practice, because it's not as big a focus, I will often look at food journals that the clients submit to me, and it's like I can see very quickly, like if they're having 2 to 3 snacks in a day, like one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then one at night, even if it's just 1 to 2 snacks, it's like your macros are off. You should be able to go 4 to 6 hours meal to meal without having that happen. And 9 times out of 10, if I look at the composition of the meals they're eating, inevitably there's going to be a very carb heavy meal, and it could be healthy. Like I was just looking at a client's food journal that I'm prepping for this coming week, and she's doing a lot right. She's eating a lot of nutrient dense food. She's eating a lot of whole foods. But I think one of her snacks or one of her meals, if I remember correctly, maybe this happened twice over 3 days I was looking at, were soups full of vegetables and a little corn, which we could argue is maybe not the best for a lot of people out there. So there's nothing really technically wrong with that, but like, where's the protein? And was she putting coconut oil or olive oil in there? You know what I mean? So like, no
Yeah.
wonder she needed a snack 2 to 3 hours later. So it's like just kind of looking at and getting that impression of like, okay. And then, to your point too, with the whole like glucose utilization, I've seen that with even like fruits like bananas. I think any fruit or something like dates, I guess they would technically be a fruit. I don't really know what to call them, but like, foods that are just naturally higher in sugar. Some people, and I do really think this is like genetic potential that gets activated, they're gonna be a little bit more prone to having like insulin resistance and poorer glucose uptake than others. Like, again, I haven't run a CGM on myself, but I guess one advantage I've just noticed maybe having a really long history of doing like, training and competitive sports is like I typically find I can handle a little bit more of a sugar load probably than the average, say, like weight loss resistance client I might get because I have never had an issue with like unusual weight gain. I've got a lot of muscle mass naturally on my body. Now, not to say I want to take liberty with that and like go to the extreme area, but like right now we're in birthday season. So we've got literally like 3 people in our house all have birthdays like 2 weeks apart, like no joke. And our tradition is to go to this bakery in our area that has like wheat free, gluten free. Like this is funny, but like it's actually we look forward to it, right? And so what did we do this weekend? My little guy turned 7. We go to this bakery. I kid you not, we got $100 worth donuts and cupcakes. And I mean, granted, we're feeding many people, and then he had like some little friends and cousins and stuff. But like, I mean, I know my sugar consumption is much higher than it would be between the end of August and the end of September. And then you have the holiday season that comes within a month or two of that. And I
Yeah.
know that I don't feel as good during that time of year because I'm indulging, but it isn't like I suddenly blow up and I gain 12 pounds either. And so like half of that is very individual. And like again, this is where the GI weakness was kind of inborn to a certain extent metabolically. There's a little bit of that saving grace there. But like you're right, this is where it can be very individual and like you can handle dates, but it might not be something you want to do on its own as a standalone snack without some protein and fat. And then you'd also have to decide if you really like them, like how often do you want to allow yourself that indulgence? Because there is that compounding effect of these foods. Like guaranteed, if I was eating Happy Bellies, this stuff from the bakery every week of my year, we'd have problems inevitably, like sooner
That's
or
a
later.
problem.
know, there's stuff in there that I wouldn't normally have. Like I don't typically eat grains, right? Like there's other
Yeah.
things in those foods beyond just the sugar that I know cause problems for me and don't make me feel so well and create fatigue and a little bit of brain fog and
Yeah.
stuff. So it's very interesting. And I think that's the dance that we do with our clients and teaching them like, here's your like toolbox of knowledge and skill sets now that you've gone through this process with us. Like you know now and like knowledge is power. So not to say you can never do some of these things, but do it with your eyes wide open and do it consciously and do it in the way that's going to have the least impact possible. So, like if I have a donut from Happy Bellies, I make an egg to go with that. I'm not just having that donut by itself. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like that's kind of that deeper level of just nutritional understanding that I think can really be helpful in giving people the ability to feel like they can participate in life, they can have these indulgences, they can celebrate
Yes.
their birthdays, they can go have these special treats and go these
Yes.
places they like to go every so often without it being this like crazy process that derails them. But yes, 80%, 85, 90% of the time, we really should be trying to stay within a framework where we have a lot more, for lack of a better word, control, right? Like we're cooking our foods
Yes.
at home. We're really designing our dietary template in a way that's going to work best for our bodies, right?
Yes. This kind of a deep dive, especially when looking into glucose, some people can get really like, oh my God, I can't do this or I cannot see this. And it says to me, this is so, I look in the aliences of curiosity.
Yeah,
And also, you can see how exercise is so powerful.
it
I did
is.
so many experiments of eating foods that are really not great
Mhm.
beyond, prior to exercise, without not exercising for 2 days, and then eating the same stuff after my exercise session. Muscles are hungry. They're
Yeah,
hungry.
totally, totally.
So, I mean, why not? So we say, I say with my clients, and it says complex carbs is a benefit to you. We need
Yeah.
them. We
Yes.
want to. So when is the best time to eat it? Well, after you push hard at the gym,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So why not? I'm not saying go and eat it all out, all 10 donuts. None of that. We still need, in order to build muscle, we need macronutrients, especially protein, but we also need the carbs. So we're not saying here eat the junky carbs, but it's incredible to see the power of muscle.
Yeah.
And most people like going for walks. Okay, walks have some impact as well. I even did
Mhm.
that. Kind of says, okay, I'm feeling the dip because I ate this stuff, and I'm like, okay, I need to go and walk because holy crap. I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't. And I'm like, I can't keep seeing my blood sugar going up and up and up this way. And I'm like, I gotta go. You know,
Yeah.
and yes, there is studies proving that it can help, balance the blood sugar 10, 15 points, depending on how fast you walk and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
reality is it's going to the gym. It
Yeah.
is doing the reps. It is building the muscle,
Yeah.
and you're going to feel so much better overall. But when it comes to glucose management and balance to ensure that we are preventing this, uh, oxidative stress, to getting our cells to stay healthy so we can generate the energy, that variability throughout the day is incredible. It's
Mhm.
incredibly important. And most of us have no idea. And when you go and you do your lab test, you see, oh, my glucose is 90. A doctor is not going to say anything until is most doctors until is above 99. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's a problem. That's a fasting glucose. We want a fasting glucose 75 to 85. That's ideal. That's
Right.
optimal, as we call it.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Because throughout the day, as we eat, it's going to go up and down. We also, teach a lot about what is healthy.
Exactly.
If your baseline is a 90, what is healthy to go up and how long it stays. So
Yep.
all those things, we can see that. And we're going to see that our cells are also become more resistant to certain foods. For
Mhm.
example, I tested, I mean, man, I couldn't remember the last time I ate pizza.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So I said, okay, there is a pizza place, by my house here. They have all three different types. It's great. I'm like, oh, I found one place that has uh, cauliflower
Yeah, okay.
crust, and they also have vegan cheese. So I
Okay.
got cauliflower crust, and then I got a gluten-free crust, and then I had the regular crust.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Each one of those pizzas is small, like put half vegan cheese, half regular cheese. And I
Okay.
said, you question why doing all this? Well, because the vegan cheese, when you look at the ingredients, is pure junk.
Well, yeah,
Most
it's
of it
usually
is the
soy or something.
starches. It's the
Yeah.
starches.
Yeah.
Potato starch, tapioca starch,
Yeah.
oils, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. And then you look, and I looked before I went, so I look, what are the ingredients of this cauliflower crust? A
Yeah.
lot of starches.
Yeah.
There is some cauliflower in there, but God knows how much. And the example that I wanted to give to people is like, oftentimes they take it, in a platter. Oh, cauliflower crust is healthy. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
How is your body going to receive? I'm not creating a case over here for a gluten, a regular dough, because that is going to be often, a lot of problems because of the gluten
The
itself,
wheat. Yeah.
pesticides, herbicides,
Right.
glyphosate. There's several other things beyond blood sugar, and blood sugar is not the answer to everything. That's
Right, right.
important to know, but it gives a lot of insights.
Right. Right.
And then I tested my blood sugar actually was the worst of a cauliflower crust.
Was it really? Yeah.
It's insane. Insane.
I mean, I've
It
heard
was
that,
it was
Maria.
insane. And
Yeah.
then but all of them, without having exercise around, it spiked about 100 points, close to that. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
lot. And by the way, those two slices, I measure each portion keep it
Yep.
about the same. So to
Yeah.
have like no variables. The only
Yeah.
variable was, did I exercise in the last day or two or not?
Yeah.
Because if I exercise and I ate, exercise this morning, I ate this afternoon, different than
Yeah.
not having exercised. Because
Totally.
the muscle, folks, they keep what? Keep exercises for, it's active for 24 hours to 48 hours.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's a machine. It's a beautiful machine that is here to help us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is incredible. But then you think about, okay, well, even if you're a little bit more regulator in any other food, you ask the question is, oh, okay, uh, what am I eating?
Right.
Because you can say, for example, I tested alcohol. I tested alcohol in carbs, and it was incredible to see the impact that alcohol had on my body.
Mhm.
And, okay. I mean, I went there, my blood sugar was fairly okay. I had like a glass of wine, 9 ounces, a little bit longer because I wanted to stay in that restaurant for a prolonged period of time because I wanted to test with carbs as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I says, what's happening? Blood sugar stays stable. So a glass of wine, okay, no food. I had food earlier, that's fine. And then I says, okay, after a couple hours in there, I said, let me have some carbs now. I just ordered a sweet potato fries, a side of potato, not a big serving, actually. And I ate and I kept watching my blood sugar. He barely moved, actually. And you said, what's going on here? Well, it's the liver and
Mhm.
insulin. So what's happening is, the liver is responsible for providing that glucose to keep our body, regulated.
Mhm.
So when there is toxicity like alcohol, the liver goes and stop doing that priority of glucose management and goes to what?
Detoxification of the
Process.
alcohol. Yeah,
Yes,
100%,
wants to
Maria.
process
Yep.
the alcohol.
Mhm.
So that's it. So I actually saw, if you look into my metrics, my blood sugar went slightly down, right? Meaning that and if somebody's looking at that and says, this is good, this is fine, I can drink it every night, right?
Yeah,
And it says,
God.
really? What's happening physiologically?
Right.
Well, if the liver is busy, then something else is keeping this regulated. And it's often what the pancreas pumping insulin.
Right.
Insulin is going to go up, right? To keep that blood sugar down over here, especially when there are carbs in the food. So that's what
Yeah.
happened to me. I ate the sweet potato fries. The body is still processing the alcohol. It takes hours and hours and hours to process
Mhm.
alcohol, right? I had given some time and I ate that. So it happened. It didn't move much. I was like, wow, this is kind of incredible.
Yeah.
So insulin goes to work, keeps the blood sugar, bring it down. And then what happened after is the key.
Yeah.
Dips. I saw the blood sugar even going lower after the carbs. Isn't that fascinating? So here it is, somebody who is maybe using glucose or going to the doctor and measuring potentially just their A1C
Mhm.
and just glucose, but not checking C-peptide, just the beta providing, for insulin. And then we're looking for fasting insulin markers. We're missing a lot. So alcohol not only is going to create significant imbalances, you know, in glucose, not that it's going to keep it up and down. Obviously, I'm talking about a wine very different than beer, for example. Beer is
Sure.
thin sugar in it,
Yeah.
and spirits are lower. So there is wine is like halfway moderate sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there is several other, toxins that are released by alcohol. And then after, by the way, I even look into, I said, I was hungry. I was hungry. I'm like, oh my God. I had eaten, before I went there and I ate that very late. And then I had the fries late as well. And then I got home and I was like, oh my God, I cannot go to bed. I was starving.
Yeah.
And then I saw my blood sugar kind of poof, 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 down, dipping.
Yeah.
That's caused by alcohol.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting, Maria? And I mean, this gets to kind of like a much deeper level, but again, it shows how critical the gut is with a lot of this too. So it's not always just the foods, but like You can have microbial imbalances that are causing aldehydes in the gut, which is almost like having this constant little alcohol producing factory in
Yes.
your body. That, again, this is like obviously a much more advanced kind of level of problem we're talking about here, but it just goes to show that, like, this is why running a functional stool test like the GI map is so helpful too. Like, we can't necessarily say, oh, we see all of these bacteria and this candida, but just generally, the more dysbiosis in that gut, the more symptoms and systems of the body impacted, the more I would really wonder about alcohol like byproducts, ammonia, that type of stuff being produced from the gut constantly 24/7, which needs to be addressed because that is a chronic load on the liver, which is going to take away its ability to regulate sugar handling via glucagon production, right? Which is going to take stored sugar, convert it into active, well, basically stored energy, right? Convert it into glucose so we can get it to the cells. And then you add the weak, poor digestion piece to this puzzle, right? Especially with carbs. Like, the macronutrient that's the most prone to poor breakdown if you aren't digesting your food. We could say protein, yes, from the level of stomach acid, but carbohydrates, oh my God, people don't see beef come out in the toilet. They don't see chicken come out in the toilet. I mean, I know this is very literal. They see things like bits of corn. And I mean, corn is hard to digest, or bits of like leafy greens if they had that, or, that type of thing, tomato skins, right? Like, that is the food that is not getting broken down. And so imagine you could be eating all these wonderful vegetables or fruits or grains or whatever it is. And like, they're also like, maybe not vegetables, but some of the starches and grains are going to be higher in, potential glucose that could impact your sugar handling. And then if you're not digesting them, like, oh my
Yes.
God, right? So like, it can get very involved in terms of just
Yes.
trying to address all of those factors that could be leading to blood sugar spikes. And I think that's where getting back to using the right combination of testing along with something like a CGM
Yes.
can be so powerful, because it isn't just about, well, let's find the right diet that isn't going to spike your blood sugar. Yes, it's a
Yes.
piece of it, but we want to actually get your GI system
Yes.
working better so that you're not spiking so much in response to some of these foods if
Right.
possible too, right? So like, yeah, it's just so interesting to think about all of these different pieces and how they connect, right?
Yeah, it is. And and also it's I would say that, CGMs are now are mostly available. They
Mhm.
are inexpensive, so people can get it. I was testing 2 CGMs on the same arm, and comparing the notes, and seeing how they're different. Yeah, I was pretty involved process for a month, which I'm very grateful that I've done it because I learned a lot of things and I can tell a lot of stories from it. Uh, but it comes also a lot of folks are using them just because they're curious but not fully understanding, I
Mhm.
think, the data
Yeah.
and how then to optimize instead of just cutting things down. The
Yeah.
objective over here is not about cutting things down, right? But it's also
Mhm.
maybe swapping or understanding, you know, when to eat, the amount to eat. And yes, if it is a junk food, nobody's saying, okay, eat junk food,
Right,
right?
right,
But
right,
hey,
right.
is that interesting to understand what we'll do? Because even if
Totally.
we think about, French fries not impacting the blood sugar, well, how about the oils on that fried food? What
Yeah.
is doing to the cells? Again, we go back and ask different questions. What is
Right.
the quality of the food? What is involved on that you might not see from a glucose perspective, but is really impacting your body? And over time,
Mm,
what can lead to that oxidative
totally.
stress, which is going to create a lot of metabolic health. And then again,
Exactly.
oh, microbiome imbalances and things like that.
Mhm.
So working with a coach, a practitioner who kind of understands and can educate, I think it can give a phenomenal value instead of just putting something on the arm and says, "Oh, I see that is up," and okay, so then do what about it?
Right, exactly. Exactly, Maria.
I mean, I had people like, "Oh, yeah, that was interesting." I said, "So, oh, interesting, and so what? I mean, save
Right.
your money." I mean,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I would say save your money until you're really putting some effort to understand and seek answers. And that, yes, a practitioner can help you with that. A
Yeah,
qualified somebody who can do that and save you a lot of time.
totally.
Because there is golden. I mean, it's golden nuggets. I
Yeah.
mean, it's fascinating to understand your physiology, and understand things that are beyond, that little tool that are you using. right? Even
Yeah.
like, my aura ring over here. I mean, what about it? People
Right.
say, well, my resilience is this, my sleep is that. And okay, let's dive into other numbers, right? Like,
Exactly.
and understand from that so you can continue to thrive or start thriving again, right?
Exactly. Exactly,
Yeah,
Maria.
it's fascinating.
It is
Um,
fascinating. Well, should we leave people with kind of like a
yes,
simple takeaway here that
yes.
without short of going out and buying a CGM, because neither of us would recommend that because it is a complex enough tool. I think it would be well worth working with someone to make that investment, right? Because like you said, why make the investment if you're not understanding fully what you're getting back data wise, right? So like short of that, what could people start to focus on, Maria?
I would say from a, glucose perspective, I guess, or macros perspective, fiber is going to be your friend at all times. It's going to slow down that food process. So oftentimes, hey, if you eat something that has maybe a higher glycemic load, and you can think about, fruits that are tropical and things like that, but also process, carbs like processed foods, which we're not suggesting, but if
Like
there is,
crackers,
yeah,
bread,
yeah,
yeah,
crackers and breads. We're not
chips.
suggesting any of that, but hey, if that's what you want to enjoy, hey, what can we do here? Right? Let's
Mhm,
put some fiber in and let's ensure that your food also contains enough protein in there to help balance.
mhm.
That's a simple thing. And if you have no idea, how much fiber am I getting? The question is this fiber being put into a food or is actually part of the food? Very
Right,
different
right,
how the
right, right.
body's gonna also accept that because you can see, oh, in this packaged food has like 10 grams of fiber. Well, where's that fibers coming from? I mean, is that being injected in there? I mean, the body's going to process differently than actually you eating a big salad with a lot of fibrous, foods in there, for example,
Sure, sure.
right? So we start with fiber, start with evaluating and using a tool like a chronometer or a Fitball or whatever it is to understand your macros. So
Mhm.
that's one simple thing. And understand also that the time that you eat foods are going to be relevant.
Sure.
And, if you're exercising quite a bit, know that the muscle needs to grow, is going to need some proteins and carbs after that. Have enough foods in your body to sustain, depending on where you are with your life, right? I mean, am I
Mhm.
eating enough? And to sustain what I'm doing? Or am I going to a workout, or stressful events with an empty stomach? What is that physiologically doing for me? And what can be causing, my body to go through this ups and downs? Because whether or not have food, you could be having some significant variability in glucose and impacting your cells. So those are a couple things.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
about
for
you?
sure. For sure, Maria. Yeah, so just to kind of like adopt or adapt maybe what you said to people with IBS and IBD because this is a little bit trickier camp and I find fiber aggravates them. So they
Mhm.
have a lot of bacterial overgrowth or sometimes it's even undergrowth, but generally there's so much disorder in their digestive systems and the wrong microbes are thriving that just keep in mind fiber will feed all bacteria, even the bad ones, right? So I would say in terms of fiber, and what do we mean by that, Maria? So like all fruits and vegetables inherently contain it, right? I mean, all grains and starches to a certain extent contain it as well. There's different types, there's soluble and insoluble fiber. I'm gonna get a little technical here for the IBS, IBD folks, but like I personally have seen people do much better with forms of soluble fiber rich foods, these would be things like and I know they're more starchy, but things like your sweet potatoes, your root vegetables are not
Mhm.
as likely to like promote bowel movements quite as much as like say leafy greens and
Mhm. Mhm.
like low glycemic, index veggies, although they're kind of contraindicatory blood sugar wise, right? A lot of times if the people with like loose stool are in that category of suffering, they're already potentially eliminating a lot of foods to begin with or just very food avoidant. And so, if you want to try to help your sugar handling, I think it's actually just simply starting with making sure you're getting enough fat and protein with every meal and then have your carbohydrate add on. So, From what I've seen, if people are going to eat things like squash or carrots or potatoes on the side, as long as they're getting a good dollop of like coconut oil or tallow or, olive oil or what have you, whatever your healthy fat is with it to help slow the absorption of that glucose. And then make sure you get enough protein, whatever that would be for you, whether that's fish or chicken or beef or lamb or whatever your choice is, leaning on whole foods. And I would definitely say, like, rule of thumb is, I think as long as you're focusing on mostly whole foods, you're gonna be okay. Like in terms of your nutrient density, probably getting enough fiber if you're eating some fruits and vegetables throughout the day, depending on how many of them you tolerate, right? Because this is obviously going to be dependent whether you've got GI distress or you don't. And so, um, I think the biggest shortcoming I see with my clients is either not getting enough protein or not getting enough fat with their meals, and then not understanding how much they need, especially women. Like they just are classically under eating those two macros. And then that can set the stage for them getting hungry again in 2 hours, or sometimes
Yes.
even 3 hours. It's just not quite able to make it meal to meal. And so that would be my guidance in kind of adjusting that. And you don't necessarily, especially if you have IBS or IBD. I mean, I have a lady right now I'm working with who I was surprised is purposefully adding like inulin and flaxseed and that kind of thing. And I looked at her GI map because she had brought one in from a recent one that she had done with another practitioner. We're ordering more tests for her, but she's got all this bacterial overgrowth. And I was like, oh, good God, no. Like, we have to stop this, like, inulin and stuff because it's going to go right to feeding all that commensal overgrowth, at least right now, until she's in a better place with her gut. Or I fear it's just going to perpetuate that nutrient malabsorption issue that's she's got going on. And we sort of have to wipe that slate clean and just get some of that prebiotic, probiotic stuff out for the time being, knock down that bacterial overload, and then from there, like improve digestion and try to like build her back up and see if she can handle those foods. But she eats well. It's just some of these things on top of that, could be potentially a problem. Now, from a glucose handling standpoint, I don't know that that's necessarily going to like hurt her, but the malabsorption issues are definitely going to relate to poor glucose, right? Because
Yes.
you can't get that nutrition in, you're not going to be able to get it to the cells either. That's definitely going to cause your blood sugar to dip for sure.
Yeah, and I think that to that point, that's why sometimes the carnivore diet
Hmm.
goes well temporarily for people
For
because they
sure.
are avoiding exactly this. They're avoiding
Yeah,
the fiber. They're avoiding the foods that are creating some imbalances on a gut that dysbiotic. And
totally.
obviously, very rarely somebody's going to have some negative glucose imbalance from eating protein and fats. I mean,
Right.
it's going to be okay. You got to eat a ton. Actually, the problems could be sometimes on a lot of animal protein is insulin. The insulin score
Yes.
might go up, not the
Yeah.
glucose score. So
Right.
again, unless we're testing, we're not understanding that a CGM or a pricking your finger is not going to do it. But
Right.
going back to the point of why sometimes diets can do really well for somebody,
Right.
it's because you're removing exactly what we're talking over here. Okay,
Right.
glucose is good. So yes, okay, I'm sensitive again for my cells, right?
Yeah.
My A1C is better again. My cardiovascular way is better. Well, we're removing a lot of the things that were creating oxidative stress that are damaging, you know, all the organs in your body. So okay, so sometimes, like you said, okay, calm down the system
Yep.
and then eventually test, not guess, to see where we're at.
Exactly.
But eventually, if we keep eating that diet for many, many, many years, might be detrimental later on
Oh,
because of
for
the
sure,
lack
Maria.
of bacteria in
For
the body.
sure.
You
For
you
sure.
don't get a lot of the bacteria from eating meat.
Oh gosh, yeah. And the other big trade-off people don't think about is inevitably it's going to downregulate your metabolism. Your thyroid is not going to function well on a
Yes.
carnivore diet, or an all protein, all fat diet. You definitely need to have carbohydrate in there, which is why
Yeah.
getting to the root of the issue that's causing the GI issues is sooner or later what you're going to have to look at. And just when that happens, when thyroid function goes down, you actually can see people on long-term, like high fat, high protein, very low to minimal carb diets develop insulin resistance even in
Yes.
that type of situation.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
the answer is not to like just eliminate carbs or lower them to such a level that will temporarily help a certain percentage of people for a little bit of time, but sooner or later you're going to have to figure out what's driving this issue and get back to a more balanced macronutrient, which definitely includes carbohydrates. You have to have them in your diet. And then from there, it's really just figuring out optimally which foods do you do best on after you've addressed the gut, after you've addressed toxin load, whatever the heck is going on deeper to that, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Ooh,
That was a
didn't
good
we
one. That was
talk?
a long
That was,
conversation, Maria.
I know. And hopefully, for those who are listening, got a lot of value from it. There's a lot
Yes.
of experiences that we have with our own clients, with ourselves. And those are real stories. It's not fabricated. And the goal over here is to provide you some insight and say, oh, maybe this has happened. Maybe,
Mhm.
maybe I need to look into this. Continue to
Totally.
listen to your body. If you're listening to this, is because you are into health and wellness, and there is
Exactly.
maybe either you're curious or you're trying to address some symptom or
Right.
multiple symptoms.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
Be curious.
Yep.
Test. Work with somebody who's got the skills and the knowledge to help in this journey.
Yep.
Because your body has a lot of answers.
Mhm.
It has a lot of answers. You just need to dig out of it. Right?
That's it.
And Courtney and I are here to support you if that's what you want the next step to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we welcome comments, we welcome questions. We've always got stuff to talk about, but it's always so great just to know what everyone is wondering about or curious about or needs clarification on, because then we can obviously get more targeted with our conversations to
Yes.
help you all out, right?
Yes. It was great again. I'll see you next month.
Next
Uh,
month, so we'll be
right?
in October. Yep, at our typical time, we'll be back on track. I'm traveling. My schedule's a little bit off this month, so we're doing kind of a specially timed episode. But
Yes.
we'll be back on track next month, Maria. Same time, same place. I think
Yes.
last Thursday of the month. Traditionally, we're doing 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yes. Sounds
Yes,
good. You have a
perfect.
great rest of your day, and have fun with the bakeries and all that.
Oh my God, yeah, I'll let you know how that goes. It'll talk about eating experiments. I'm about to go on one. So well
Yes.
empowered with my supplement supports though, Maria.
Yes. Supplement to support the devastation.
Oh God, yeah, I'll do what I can at least, right?
Yes. All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.